So probabilistic thinking is where you, as I said, estimate the likelihood of any of specific outcome. And it's through logic, usually, because you're dealing with numbers and probabilities. And you use arguments to facilitate the possible applications of it. And it's very powerful. Like even Benoit Mandelbrot, I think that's how you say his name.
Is it Benoit?
It's like Benoit. Benoit, probably.
French.
All right. Yeah.
Benoit, how do you spell his surname?
Mandelbrot.
Mandelbrot?
Brot. B-R-O-T.
Mandelbrot. Mandelbraut.
O-T.
Yeah. Mandelbrot.
Benoit
Mandelbrot.
Yeah. You pronounce it way better than I did.
Mandelbrot. I don't know. I'm not a French expert, right. But I know it's Benoit.
That sounds more like it actually. So he's one of like the greatest.
Did you say Benoit?
Yeah. Benoit. We Aussies are so bad with name pronunciations.
I think it's just you, mate.
All right, yeah, fine. Yeah, it's me.
Learn your French.
Going back on Benoit was
Benoit,
who's one of the greatest mathematicians, would say like the theory of probability is the only mathematical tool that helps us map the unknown and the uncontrollable. And whilst it is very difficult to grasp this concept, it can be extraordinarily powerful and also convenient as well. And so with probabilistic thinking, there's actually like three things that are really involved. And the more you apply it, the more accurate your decision making will be, and it will just improve your process of decision making. So one of the things is called Bayesian thinking. I don't know if you've ever heard about Bayesian. So Bayesian thinking is basically updating our beliefs and probabilities as we gather new information. So you can think of it like AI. AI is always updating, like what's the latest news, what's the latest data it's getting, and it's always trying to basically apply this knowledge in its algorithm or whatever it uses. So basically it's just like contracting away from views that are static, that don't change, or possibilities, and just incorporating new evidence all the time. So that's basically Bayesian thinking in very simple words.
It's updating information.
Yeah, always seeking like new information as well, and new perspectives as well, and taking that in. And the greatest example is like doctors. They use this a lot, right? If they estimate that as a 10% chance of a patient having a certain disease based on symptoms, but then they get new results that, it might be actually lower, then they have to update, or it might be actually higher, then they have to actually update that information, have to try new things to be able to minimize the probability of that occurring. So that's like an example of Bayesian thinking.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, because I think if we've seen how we've revolutionized over the past how many years, it's always been through new ideas and new ways of thinking. And now that we've got a significant flow of information now, like so many podcasts, YouTube is a big source now, even social media, Instagram, TikTok, the flow of information is just going to revolutionize at each point. And I think people are starting to understand now that what you consumed 10 years ago and what you consume now are very different. But what you would have consumed in 2001 compared to 2011 or 12 would have also been just as different. So I think opening yourself up to different perspectives actually helps you gain a better understanding of life and the world around you. Because I think I'll never understand how people can always be just like one-dimensional thinking and just have it, just see, instead of seeing things outside their lens. It's very close to their lens. If you look at the camera right now, it's very narrow, and it doesn't get you anywhere because it doesn't make you interesting as a person, right? If you're just one-dimensional and you don't really think about other perspectives, you can't actually have a conversation with other people or connect with other people, because you'd be surprised at how many different perspectives there are in life and how people think,
Yeah, definitely. I think it just ends up sabotaging yourself as well, because especially in this day where like there's just so many things happening and technology and everything is rapidly growing, you're only doing yourself a disservice by not being up to date with a lot of things. And by the way, like I understand that sometimes some people will like look at older types of sources of information, like for example, religion. Like we still refer to this day, right? and it just for a lot of people they go by that, and that there's no problem with that. And I'm not saying that's not an issue. Even like with like philosophy, a lot of the stuff we're talking about with philosophy is like from thousands of years ago. Like you think about Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism, but it's been sort of probably like remarketed and like reworded, reinterpreted.
The thing is though, with that stuff, right? That way of thinking is applicable to every day. I think the way I see it, right? Like all the Stoicism is, it's about like when I think of those philosophical views and ideas, it's very applicable to everything in your life, right? No, I'm not like you're right. I think, but then I don't think there'll be no more research into philosophy of life because you've already know the philosophy of life. People already know what the necessities are of life. Some people don't, some people do. So philosophy, like I think you're right. I think there are certain topics that can't be revolutionized. They're more, but they can be applied better in today's terms, in current terms. I think religion is an interesting one because I think religion forces, I don't mean this lightly, and I don't mean offense to anyone. Religion forces a one-dimensional thinking in a way at times because it's just what you think and what you know. But once you actually expand your horizon and think, okay, well, there's all these religions. They all have a holy book. They're all saying something. What does that mean? You know, it's sort of thinking of it that way. And I think that's where the revolution towards religion is, because now has like 1,000 years ago, right, the holy books of respective religions was only catered in that one geographical area. Right? So if we look at Islam, very Middle East. Hinduism was very centralized to India. Christianity, I'm not 100% sure. I'm probably going to say Judaism, like the Middle East area, because I think that's where, I'm not a Christian historical expert, so apologies. And then Judaism, very centralized to the Middle East as well. So now, all this information is flowing from different geographical places. Right, now in Australia, we've got 7 different holy books, for example. America has 7. Every country is now starting to adopt this. And so I think it's up to us to really think about it, because now information is readily available. So what are you doing about it? You know, are you really going to stick to that? And I'm not saying challenge your religion or challenge what you read. Believe what you want, but be respectful and mindful that there are other beliefs out there that will challenge you. And it's up to you to find what you think is the right answer for you.
Yeah, that's really,
because I don't mean to disrespectfully, but I don't think there's an ultimate truth at times. Like, yeah. I don't think anyone ever. I'll reword it. I don't think anyone knows the ultimate truth after what happens after death. No one will ever will.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, that's why it's called faith, right?
Yeah.
You're believing in something that you can't see, you don't know, but you just have belief in it. But yeah, definitely. I think it's good that we brought this up because then people can interpret this completely wrong. And there's some things that are timeless, as you said, like some things that are like the golden rule. That's actually in all religions, like the golden rule. Treat people how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Things like that. These are like philosophy and all this stuff. These are timeless. And this is actually called Lindy effect. Actually, it's interesting. It's like something that is a lot older in that regard might be actually, and that's lasted this long, might actually be quite timeless in history and might be actually more reliable. So it's actually, in a way, it's almost contradicting what we're saying, but you got to look at context with things. Like, obviously with Stoicism, it's lasted for thousands of years, and these types of philosophies have lasted for thousands of years. So that means the fact that they've lasted this long means they're going to last even longer, probably over time. So it's like, but these are the types of things where it's okay to go with those types of mentalities. I mean, obviously you got to be open in the world, but I think what I was more referring to with Bayesian thinking is like more of like statistics, like what's happening with with technology, with AI is coming, so you have to sort of adapt to this new environment. And even with statistics as well, like plane crashes, you might think, as you said, headlines, plane crashes have skyrocketed. Yeah, so maybe it's gone from, I'm just going to put random statistics, I don't know what the real statistics is, but say they say the word skyrocketed, or let's just say crime rates have skyrocketed. So say crime rates were like 0.01% in your neighborhood. Skyrocketed. It's done 2 times now. It's 0.02%. It's like that's still extremely low, right? It's like a 99.8% chance you're not going to come across a criminal, for every person that you encounter, for every 10,000 whatever people you encounter. So when you put it like in that regard, it hasn't really actually been to the, and when you look at it from the outer perspective, like zooming out, it's like probably trending low.
Yep.
So it's like that's what you want to be looking at in that type of frame. Because when you hear the word skyrocket, you automatically think like you just make numbers in your head. And I think like now, like the next part is fat-tailed distributions. Sounds very funny, but
Fat-tailed distributions.
do you remember like the bell curve in maths?
Yeah,
You may
yeah,
have-
yeah.
Or maybe
Yeah.
you may have come across in business or something. So the bell curve is like the type of diagram which sort of helps identify outliers and what is like very common. So when you see the peak of the bell curve, that is referring to the most commonly occurring observation. And I guess like what the important thing is here is like recognizing like the center of the bell curve, where they could, it depends on what you're trying to measure here. But if you're trying to measure risk or something, it can help identify like what the biggest risk is in this like situation. And then you can start to think about plans of how you can mitigate that from occurring, like how to manage it better. So it prepares you for events, and you can basically prepare plans for rare or impactful events and things like that.
See, the thing is, I love how you say that, and I think logically it sounds really fun. Logically it sounds like the right thing to do, but how many people actually have a plan?
I think everyone has a plan, but how many does it go to accordingly is really low.
For risk mitigation?
Oh, for risk mitigation, maybe not that common.
Like for
'Cause-
plans like this, for example, for the fat tail curve.
Oh, right. Well, fat tail curve is just showing like distribution of information and data.
Right.
So it's more of just like a visual diagram to show you what's more common and what's outlier.
So, but
events, yeah.
But do you think people actually sort of think about that and really then go? And I'm not saying this is it's a bad. You're right, but I think a lot of people don't really. It goes back to the just survive mentality or just live mentality rather than preparing, the preparation mentality. Is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, right. Well, I think it's not just applicable for just, I think, like your daily life. It's just for like when you're gathering information as well.
Right.
Like when people say, for example, I'm just trying to think of an example, like beauty standards. Like looking at beauty standards, right? Everyone thinks like, oh, the person that has the most unique features is going to be like, if we do grading, I don't really like it, but I'm just saying, most people will think like someone who has the most unique features is going to be like an 8 out of 10. And now when you define unique, it's like, okay, like and what you actually find, right? There's actually studies as well. I was watching a video about this as well, where the more average you are to like how a human looks, it's just only going to take one unique feature to make you stand out. So say, for example, you have, say you have, your facial structure and everything, your body type is all like closer to a human, right? And you just have one unique feature. So you're just very tall. Then now that makes you obviously like 7 or 8 out of, or 9 out of 10 or something, like beauty standards wise. Whereas if you had something completely unique where you have like completely deformity, and then like you have exotic tattoos everywhere in your face, and then you have like all these piercings and all these things, now it doesn't make you as appealing. According to beauty standards, it makes you probably a lot less. But it's interesting because people think like, oh, like the more unique features I have, the better I will look, in the better beauty standard I'll be. But it's actually the more average you are as a human, but just one single unique feature of you makes you actually stand out more. And we see this like in plastics, like with celebrities, they go overkill with plastic surgery because they think like this is what the beauty standard is. But now, and then most people have this thing where it's like they looked better before than they looked after. So it's like, but because of this idea of like the more unique I am, the more unique I look, the better I will be perceived. But it's not like that. And like in the fat tail distribution, when you look at it, the closer you are to like the common features, and just with one unique feature of yourself or something makes you stand out. So it's just interesting when you have gradings of like 8 out of 10, 1 out of 10, whatever. Like that's what you'll find. Most of the 5, 6, 10 is like common, but yeah. So it's just very interesting when you look at how you like information and data, how you can better make conclusions with that type of approach.
Can you recap that a bit more?
It's It's basically the distribution of information, and you're just trying to find outliers, and understand like what's it's basically identifying what's happening more frequently, what's happening less frequently, and just using that to your advantage for whatever you're trying to. So I can't really think of like the most effective example right now, but that just came to my mind. Beauty standards.
Yeah, okay.
But it's just a different way of looking at information. And yeah, so the next one is recognizing. It's asymmetry of information. So the thing is, like, probabilistic thinking allows you to acknowledge asymmetry of information, as often we might have a lot of gaps because we have assumptions based on heuristics, and obviously because of our biases and things. So we tend to, as well, when you're talking about plans, it made me think that we tend to overestimate a lot of the positive outcomes, but we underestimate the negative outcomes a lot. And this is where asymmetry of information happens, right? Whenever you think about an idea, there's actually 5 stages you go through. The first one is like the positive, I think it was like optimistic. I think it was like optimistic. I think it was, I can't remember. Optimistic, was it? Yeah, it's optimistic something. And the next one was like uninformed optimism, I think it was. Then the second stage was, it was informed pessimism. And the third stage is value of despair. The fourth one is informed pessimism. Informed optimism. And the last one was basically success.
You nailed it. So it's emotional cycle of change. Yeah, uninformed optimism, stage 1. Informed pessimism, valley of despair. Yeah, informed optimism, success and fulfillment. See, a lot of people get to that valley of despair and it's like, oh, yikes.
They give up and they start the cycle again. So like 90% of people give up at that stage. But I think like, okay, now how does this relate? But the thing is, whenever we have any idea, we always think about the positives. I was like, oh, it's going to be amazing. Then we get also echo chambers of people around us supporting us and saying, oh, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be great. Keep going, keep going. And then once we do the idea, then we get hit with like reality, which is like the uninformed pessimism. We're like, damn, I didn't know it was going to, in my plan, I didn't think that this was going to happen, but it just happened. Now you're like, oh, now you feel miserable that you're seeing this again and again. Now you're in valley of despair. Now this is where you give up. And, you know, I think it's very important that before you begin any process, you have also the informed pessimism as well. Because then when you get hit those circumstances or those situations, it's not going to throw you off and make you give up. You're going to be like, I already knew this was going to happen and I'm prepared. I've already mentally prepared for this. Because I think mindset is more important than anything else in that regard. So I think that's why asymmetry of information, like you just want to minimize, you want to make sure you also are not just overly optimistic and positive about just the good things, because you can also be aware of like the negative outcomes of what can happen and just prepare for those. Like how we talked about the black swan events. And interestingly enough, like with asymmetry of information, like it's how people profit off you. Like when you look at real estate agents, the people that have the most benefit or like the most leverage is the buyers, because they know the price of the property, they know the condition, they know about the past problems because they have a history of it, they know about neighborhood trends, they know about everything about the property. So they are more of leverage. Whereas, the seller, has the advantage, not the buyer, the seller. And the thing is, the seller can withhold information here from you. Like they're not going to say about the damages that are in the house, because if they do, then you're going to start to drop the price. So things like that. And they start to overstate positives. Like they say, oh, like it's amazing condition, blah, 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 history of it is good, blah, blah, blah. And then they start to minimize the negatives. Then you as the buyer comes in with a complete disadvantage, because there's so many things that you don't know about. And you're basing your decisions off just being optimistic, like, oh, this is all good based on what you said. And then later after you buy it, you find out there's actually hidden defects in the house, like termite damage or something else, and things like that. So, but because the seller profited off asymmetry of information, they withheld information from you and charged you at a much more premium than what it's priced. And obviously, that's why it's important when you do property. You have inspections and disclosures and testimonials and things like that, and look at history. So you want to basically, with probabilistic thinking, you want to minimize the amount of gap of asymmetry of information as possible. So that way your decision making will obviously be more optimal and more beneficial for you. Yeah.
It's a good point you raised about the positive assumptions and the overly optimism. I think it goes back to the idea that when people start something and they have an idea, they get the same dopamine rush from talking about it as if they succeeded in it. And I think that's where, because you get such a good hit out of it and you feel so good, all the negatives or something that could go wrong goes out the window. I mean, this podcast was a good example. I think we didn't anticipate some of the things that could go wrong until it happened. And then now we've got a good plan of like, okay, well, this could go wrong, that could go wrong. Let's try to minimize that. So I think sometimes, people when they fail, they don't like the learnings that come from it allows for that pessimism a bit more. But it sort of drew me to the idea that people just love talking about what they want to do instead of actually doing it.
And that's like, and they feel like they've accomplished something by doing that. I feel like with plans and like talking about it and just dreaming about it, feels like you've accomplished something, or watching videos about it, feels like you've accomplished something, but it's only until you do the thing you actually accomplish something, whether it's good or bad. So yeah, definitely.